I'm going to explain the philosophical problem known as the one and the many. Now, this problem can have some serious consequences because it involves human knowing. And a lot of modern philosophers and ancient philosophers as well have not given a sufficient answer to the problem. And so the result often ends up being some sort of relativism, moral relativism, or even nihilism, because there is a denial that human beings can actually know something based on the inability to answer this problem. So the problem goes like this. We see many things in the world, right? So you see many things. You see many apples. Look at all the apples here. Some are red, some are green. They're all different, and they all occupy a different space. But yet, in your mind, you have one concept, one idea of apple. In fact, that idea, that concept that you have in your mind of an apple, it applies to all apples that you've seen in the past, that you're seeing right now, and that you're going to see in the future. So how are these things connected? How is it that you have one idea in your mind and it applies to all these different apples? What is the connection here? There especially cannot be any connection if your mind is just your brain. If your mind is just your brain, it's just physical stuff, then there is no real connection. That's for sure. But even if we posit that the mind is immaterial, we still have to give some sort of explanation of how these two things are connected. How is it that one thing can apply to many different particular things? The main difference between modern philosophy and the older medieval philosophy or even classical philosophy, in my estimation, concerns this problem, the answer given to this problem of the one and the many. And the two philosophers that I'm speaking about in particular are Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle. They are the most important ones when it comes to answering this problem because they give an answer that is actually a solution. It actually is an explanation of how human beings are able to know. And it keeps the idea that human beings can know something with certainty. In other words, there is a real connection between the physical things that we see in the world, the many physical things we see in the world, and that concept, that one concept that we have in our mind. And here is the explanation that they give. So right here we see that this person has a concept of a chair in their mind. How did they get that concept in their mind? Well, they saw a bunch of chairs. And over time, they developed a concept of a chair, just like you developed a concept of a chair. At one point when you were a kid, you saw a bunch of chairs and you finally realized what they were. And you formed the idea or the concept of a chair. You understood what a chair is. And so we have a concept of a chair. Now the concept is not the thing that is known. It is the chair that is known. Okay? We know what the chair is. The concept is that by which we know what the chair is. So the physical chair is what we know. That physical particular chair is the thing that we know. The concept is that by which we know it. And it's like this with everything. If you know what an apple is, well, you have a concept of an apple. The concept you have is not the thing that you know first. It is that by which you know the actual physical apple. Now, this is a very important point. I know it can be kind of technical, but it's extremely important to understand it. Because if you mix this up, like what I'm going to show you right now with these modern philosophers, now the modern philosophers I'm in particular talking about are Descartes and John Locke, George Berkeley, and Kant, where they are going to say that the concept, here's the concept, now here's the second, so I'm going to divide this. What they are going to say is the concept is the thing that we know. The problem with saying something like this is that we lose the connection between us and the physical thing in the world. So if it's the concept that we know first, then what is that chair over there? What's this chair right here? If it's the concept that we know first, then how do we know the chair? In other words, we know the chair secondarily, but it seems as if it's the chair that we know first. I mean, what do you know better than the fact that your hand is in front of your face? And so the problem with mixing this up and saying it's the chair that we know first, or the concept that we know first, is that we lose the connection to the outside world. And so this even leads Descartes to give an explanation, or actually not an explanation. Descartes gives a philosophical proof for the existence of the outside world. For Descartes, you have to be a philosopher to know that the physical world exists, and to do, and to study it and to examine it. And so this second part right here that we get from the modern philosophers, this second explanation that I give of how human beings know things, this is still being dealt with. The consequences for mixing this up are still being played out in the modern world.